Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back once again, or for the very first time, to the Farts and Crap Show, where today, as per usual, it's your host, Danjo, here with another challenge run rule set overview for you guys. And, we've done a few of these. A good amount of these so far. And, since Shadow of the Erd Tree came out, I haven't really done one. That's because there's one themed run I really wanted to try, and because of how the DLC works, and like there's gonna be slight spoilers in this, I'm gonna be mentioning some things that you acquire in the DLC and kind of gonna go over why this works and stuff like that. So if any of that is a concern for you, this is your fair warning right here. But yeah. So let's get into it. The DLC is pretty much Shadow of the Erd Tree is basically completely separate from the main game, and it has its own separate map and its own separate story and NPCs and everything like that, and it nothing really affects the base game in any significant way, which is a little disappointing. But then it got me thinking. Castlevania. I've done in this series a Castlevania mode playthrough before, and that was kind of based on like the default Belmont kind of moveset that we're used to from like a lot of the early Castlevania games. And there was some mention of Rondo of Blood in that themed run. And I was like, yeah, I want to do a Symphony of the Night run. Reason for that being, since the game and the expansion, like since EldenRing and Shadow of the Erd Tree are kind of these separate things, essentially you could treat the base game like your first run in Symphony of the Night. So for the base game, Alucard mode is required. The player must start as a wretch with no keepsake. Kind of like in Symphony of the Night, you start the game as Alucard, you have all this equipment until death takes it away from you, and then you have nothing. And then you kind of have to like earn stuff back and, various things like that. And but in Symphony of the Night, after you play as Alucard, like you can also play the game as Richter or Maria, which the DLC could be considered like the inverted castle or the different runs. So let's just go into it. I'll kind of explain things as we go. So, second thing, as for equipment, only light/cloth armor, and whatever that is a fast and loose rule, so up to interpretation. And straight swords or katanas may be used. Again, this is for the Alucard portion. Affinities may be set, but no Ashes of War, except for Double Slash, Sword Dance, Stormblade, Flaming Strike, or no skill. The reason for those ones is they're kind of the closest analog to Alucard's, like, because there are kind of Ashes of War with certain weapons in Symphony of the Night. Like, you can perform specials with certain weapons. And yes, Alucard does get, like, various rods and maces and other types of weapons. But his signature weapon is the Alucard sword. Like, his basic straight sword, essentially. Now, the closer analog would be the new weapon, the light great swords, specifically the Milady. However, that's not acquired until the DLC, which is kind of a shame because it is very similar to something Alucard would use. He does have like, flaming sword thing. There's like a couple of fire techniques that Alucard has. Flaming strike was just the closest one, and I think it's called Sonic Slash or something like that. Stormblade and Sword Dance Devils, they just fit the best. Um, so if a weapon has a unique Ash of War, the weapon may not be used. This was kind of a stipulation put in there because there are quite a few katanas and straight swords where they have a unique Ash of War that totally does not fit within the thing, or it would be like a little bit too OP. It's like, because initially you read that first part and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm gonna get Rivers of Blood and Moonveil and then breeze through the game. No. So Talismans and Flask of Wondrous Physic are okay, but no Great Runes. Also, no consumables or multiplayer, but you can use NPC summons if you'd like. Any Sacred Seal may be used, as well as Flame Sling, Giant's Flame Take Thee, and Flame Fall Upon Them. The reason for those three is because, yes, Alucard does have a literal spell in Symphony of the Night where he can shoot fireballs, like 3 fireballs simultaneously at the enemy. And I was like, oh, that's like Flame Fall Upon Them. And I was like, well, yeah, if he has access to fireballs, though, shouldn't we give the player access to like the basic fireball and then later in the game the better fireball? So yeah, those 3 spells. And that's pretty much all it is for Alucard, like for the base game. So upon entering Shadow of the Erdtree, Maria or Richter mode must be chosen. Once you pick, there is no swapping. So I didn't realize this when I first came up with this idea, and before I came up with this idea even before I beat the DLC once. In this language, logically, you could go to the DLC without beating the game. And then you'd be in Maria or Richter mode. Like, you still need to finish the game at some point. But if you would want to, and I thought, this actually is kind of interesting and fun for this rule set, you could just beat Radahn and Mohg, and then switch to Maria or Richter mode. And then come back to the base game after finishing the DLC, or not, whatever, and finish the base game in Maria mode or Richter mode. So that is a possibility. Personally, I think in the rule set, in the initial Alucard mode, at least in my experience, I didn't try it that way yet. So if you want to try it that way, please feel free. Also, like, this should go without saying, but if you want to screenshot this and try it for yourself, please do. That's kind of the point of these videos. So once you pick, there is no swapping, right? So it's not like you can go through part of it and be like, oh, I chose Maria, but now I kind of want to choose Richter, or vice versa. No. One or the other. Once you're in, you're locked in. Okay, so the same rules for armor, affinities, again, approved Ashes of War only. Talisman, flasks, consumables, multiplayer, and great runes still apply. So all the other stipulations from before. So, Maria's only weapon is Dryleaf Arts or Dane's Footwork, with either Palm Blast, Dryleaf Whirlwind, or Blink Bolt. Now, the reason for those 2 weapons and those 3 Ashes of War is because in the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night, when you play as Maria, that's literally what she does. She, like, does punches and kicks, and that's like her move set. Um, Palm Blast, because that's the default Ash of War you'll get when you get Dry Leaf Arts, and it's pretty similar to her energy. I think it's called Energy Shot skill, Dry Leaf Whirlwind, because she does have this like successive kick move, and it's one of the other, like one of two Ashes of War I think you can put on these two weapons. And Blink Bolt. Actually, wait, no, Blink Bolt works on there too. Pretty sure. I think I double checked that when I wrote the rules. I'm pretty sure I did. Because she does have like an electric shoulder tackle thing. I think that's also the Saturn version. Um, in the PSP version and the Requiem version, which is basically identical, um, she throws birds at her enemies. Like, she's much more closely based on how she plays in Rondo of Blood. And there's really nothing like that in Elden Ring, so I was like, yeah, I'll just base it off the Saturn version. She can also use any sacred seal, aspects of the Crucible horns, Borealis' mist, Dragon ice, Stormhawk Dean, Azula Beastman ashes, and Great Turtle Shell. Yes, the shield, but no skill, because it does by default have Barricade Shield, which would be a little OP, and I had to nerf it a little bit. But the reason for those is because I think it's in Rondo of Blood. It's difficult when you're basing a character that has like multiple interpretations. Um, but she has four sacred beasts, is what I think they call them. There's an electric cat, which there's really nothing like that in Elden Ring, so Azula Beastman Ashes was the closest one. Um, an Azure tortoise, I think. So like, there's no like summon a tortoise thing, but we do actually have a tortoise shell or a turtle shell. Stormhawk Dean, because like her main thing is like her birds, and that was kind of the closest thing. And an ice dragon, and we do have an ice dragon in Elden Ring. But how she uses them in the games is literally she summons these animals to help her fight. And we do have access to summoning animals in Elden Ring. So I was like, these are kind of the closest things to that. Now, and that's pretty much it for Maria. So Richter mode is a little bit more typical of the like default, I guess, Belmont style. Like I mentioned, like I called it earlier. However, because of Shadow of the Erdtree, there's a lot more new tools that are much closer to what the Belmont like tools would be. So Richter is limited to whips, default Ash of War, but uniques are okay, or no skill. So there are a few whips in Elden Ring that have unique Ashes of War. If they are the default one, that's fine, or just no skill. Because none of them are really OP. There's a few, like two of them are like flame whip things. And there are a number of Castlevania games where that is like an upgrade for the whip, is like a flaming whip. And Richter canonically has like a flaming whip skill thing, so it it just fits. Smith's Grip Dagger, which is essentially I think it's called the throwing knife sub weapon. Basically, he has the sub weapons, the classic Castlevania ones, and there's a few more on top of that in Symphony of the Night, some of which don't have a very close analog. Um, but Richter has also his item crash in Symphony of the Night. So it's the default move or like the powered up version. And thankfully for the Smith's Grip Dagger, you can put Piercing Throw on it, which is basically standard throw, or scattershot throw, which is a lot like the item crash. Smith script axe, which is literally a throwing axe. Like, that's a classic sub weapon. With either spinning weapon, which is kinda like the item crash for the axe, or or a thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is on there because of a different sub weapon that a lot of people just call the revolver, and that one didn't really fit because there is kind of a gun in Elden Ring, sort of. I mean, we have the jar cannon, but it's more of an electric thing, so I thought I'd just put Thunderbolt on there as like an Ash of War because you can put it on the Smith Script Axe instead of putting a whole nother weapon on there. Next one is Chilling Perfume Bottle because it looks very similar and kind of acts pretty similar to the Holy Water sub weapon, with either Wall of Sparks or Rolling Sparks. That's literally the only two, so I thought I'd put them both on there since it's kind of like the default. And the item crash, it's not quite like the item crash. Hydro Storm, because the closest thing to Hydro Storm would be a sorcery, and I'm not going to put a sorcery on this list because it would be the only one and it wouldn't make sense to spec into it. Also, he can use kukris, fan daggers, or throwing daggers because, again, the whole throwing knives thing. And Richter can also use any sacred seal to buff with Golden Vow and or Flame Grant Me Strength. At first, Richter mode and Maria was hands down just like a little better. So I did add some things to Richter. That was the main thing, is like, okay, well, he can buff with Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. He can't use any other spells, which would make sense because he can't use magic. Like, canonically, he can use magical items, but not magic. But the Belmonts do get buffs in multiple games. So it just kind of fit and made sense and made more sense for the balancing between the two characters. And that's pretty much it for the Richter mode rule set. So any optional rules. These two kind of came out of necessity, and not necessity, but ease of use, and because Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree is like a long game, there's a chance this will come up, depending on how hard you want to make it for yourself. So, and these are optional rules. They're outside of the normal rule set. It is recommended that you only use these if you're really having trouble. So, first one, Sacred Relic Sword may be used, but only to grind runes for leveling. Now, it does make it a lot easier. You do have to fight Moog anyway to access the DLC, and you would have to beat the game to get the Sacred Relic Sword, so you wouldn't be able to just switch to Maria or Richter and then go straight to the DLC. You'd still have to beat Elden Beast to get the weapon. So, there's a trade-off. Also, any armor may be used for the final boss fight. Now, this also came out of necessity, and you may be like, okay, which final boss? For the base game or the DLC? Well, really both. It depends on how much, if you want to make it easier for yourself, or if you just want to go full into the challenge thing. The armor does make a big difference. Especially if you want to choose Maria mode. She doesn't have access to anything that's going to buff her, like with spells or consumables, so like no food in that regard. No Black Flame protection, no Golden Vow, no Lord's Divine protection. Like, there's a lot of downsides to that. And for a lot of players, you may not be accustomed to taking the amount of damage that, So it depends. And again, it's really only recommended if you're really having trouble and you want to make it a little bit easier. That's really it. But um but yeah, that's pretty much it for the rule set. So uh and in the past sometimes I've done like a little bit of an example run of like how I'd recommend like starting and going through and blah blah blah. I'm not going to do that in this video. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. And I knew the explanation would take a little bit longer than the other ones because there's more to it. But I gotta say, I think this might be my favorite themed run that I've ever done in Elden Ring. And it did take a lot of fine tuning as I went because, again, I did it live, I did it streaming, and I was like, yeah, this is not a final rule set until I actually beat it in the rule set. So yeah, there were some adjustments, and yeah, definitely the armor thing for the final boss. That was the last adjustment that I had to make. But yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for today. I just wanted to keep it short and sweet. So thank you all for being here, guys. Greatly appreciate it. If that is beautiful. I was about to pass time, and then I was like, the weather will probably change here in a sec. Faster than you may realize. But yeah, if you've tried this one for yourself, let me know in the comments. Greatly appreciated. And if you have an idea for a rule set, like a theme, also let me know in the comments. I might, I'll read through all of them, and I might pick one out and do that at some point in the future. But I am going to be taking a break from the game for a while because when the DLC came out, I went ham, and it was kind of all I streamed for a while. So, um, yeah. But thanks for being here for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Of course, before we get going, a very special thank you going out to the current Farts and Crap Show members, the amazing people who make it possible: Navelis Draconis, Aaron Shake, WTF Corey, and Rogue XOX. Thank you so much for choosing to support the show a bit more directly via channel membership. It vastly helps out. Very much appreciate it. And if you guys want to be incredibly awesome like them, get in on all those membership benefits, check out that join button down below. There's also a link in the description talking about becoming a channel member in case you don't see a join button next to the subscribe. I hear it does come up sometimes. And more on the memberships here in a second. But first, wanted to clarify, in case you guys are unfamiliar with YouTube handles, that is why WTF Corey and Rogue XOX have an @ in front of their screen name. They have channels of their own. Those are their YouTube handles. And it makes YouTube URLs a lot easier. So you can just go to youtube.com/@ and then the rest of the handle, and it'll take you right there. You can also type it into the search bar, and yeah, it'll say the channel name, but under that it'll say the handle. So the handles are unique. No two are exactly the same. So it helps makes navigation a little bit easier. Helps you know you're in the right place. But yeah, definitely go check those out when you get a minute. But yeah, the membership tiers start at $3 a month. It's only 10 cents a day, gets you into all the basic stuff, including getting to vote on the series that get made here on the channel via the members' choice polls. It's a thing we do once a month for a full 7 days, so 25% of the time we do have them going, and we are going to have one for September coming up fairly soon if you guys are watching this when the video comes out. It's probably going to be in the back half of the month. Not sure when right now because I am recording this ahead of time, and this is an approximation of future announcements from the past. So if you guys want all the announcements as they happen and the bell doesn't work for you, I totally get it. The bell doesn't work for me either. But there's 3 other ways you guys can stay up to date. the community tab here on the channel, the Farts and Crap Show Twitter, or the Discord. I always post on all three of those whenever there's an announcement, so regardless of which one works for you, you can stay up to date. And links for those are down in the description, also on the channel banner, but that is going to do it for this video. So thank you very much once again for being here, guys. Till next time, take care, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.